Now that it's been confirmed that Black Ops 6 DLC 1 is going to be Citadelle de Morts, and it's going to be taking place in a medieval castle, this stuff is not only really exciting for all that reason alone, but this is also such a relief, and also now at least tilts towards the direction of a theory that I've had about DLC 1 for a while now. And what this theory has to do with is with King Arthur, the Holy Grail, and even Excalibur. Because I think that we may be seeing these at least one way, shape, or form happen in that DLC map. Now, of course, that stuff is also very exciting, and I know you guys are going to enjoy this video, so you might as well get it out of the way with right away. Drop a like and subscribe if you ain't, and let's get into this. Now, the funny thing is that I was going to make this video before the little reveal came out, but I stopped because I was really worried about it, because one thing they told us about this map was the location of where it was going to be. They said it was going to be in Avalon, and that's kind of disheartening at first, because if you guys didn't keep up with the Warzone news, Avalon is the name of an upcoming Warzone map that was actually supposed to launch with Season 1 for Black Ops 6. Now, obviously it got delayed and Area 99 is going to be there instead, but that was the original plan. And so my worry was that DLC 1 might just be a part of that Avalon map, just something reused from that same Warzone Avalon map. I was really worried about that. But thankfully, we've seen at least a screenshot of this map, and it's going to be that same medieval castle we talked about earlier. And luckily, if you've seen the leaks of the Warzone Avalon map, there's no, castle or anything on it, so it's completely original just for zombies, which is such a relief. But more importantly, what's important for this video is its location, that it is a medieval castle somewhere in Europe, and the fact that they don't specify where in Europe kind of confirms what I've been theorizing about this for a while, because for whatever reason, they're calling the Warzone map Avalon. I don't really know what that is because I haven't looked into it, but for zombies, I think there's a really good reason for why they are choosing to say that Citadelle de Morts is going to be taking place in Avalon. And it all has to do with the Arthurian myth, or in other words, the King Arthur myth, right? And I'm not going to go over the whole myth in this story, but I'm sure a lot of you guys know about it. He's the one who got Excalibur, he pulled it from the stone, and became the first king of England and stuff like that. Like, it's supposed to be like kind of an origin story for England, I guess, kind of the first king of England. Now, you may want to stop me right there and say like, okay, wait a minute, this ain't the old chaos storyline. We're not dealing with mythical creatures anymore. And I would stop you a little right there and say that, I mean, if you guys are paying attention to the ending cutscene determinants, you would know that, yeah, actually, this is the chaos story. Like, the chaos story is now canon to the Dark Ether story. They're one and the same. If you guys missed that, I made a video about it. It'll be linked on screen now. But even with that said, I do agree that we will not see straight up mythical creatures in this again, but there definitely will be some inspiration. But let's get back to what we were talking about, the Arthur myth. And the main thing that we are supposed to take away from this myth for now is the mention of Avalon, because in that same myth, Avalon is actually an island that has so much importance to that story. But before we could even talk about the island and what it has to do with anything, the one thing I did realize the hard way recently is that there's actually multiple different versions of this King Arthur myth. There's a Welsh version, an English version, a French version, and even somewhat of a Roman Italian version, which is crazy on its own. And of course, with all these versions, I mean, which one's the right one to look to here? Well, I have two big reasons to think that where Treyarch is going to be getting inspiration for this next map is going to be mainly the French version of this myth. Now, for one of those reasons we'll get into in a little bit, but the main reason I'll tell you now is that, I mean, what's the name of the map? It's Citadelle de Morts, right? Which is French, so I'm assuming they're going to take the French inspiration of this myth, which is funny because it was the last version of this myth, the last one to ever come out, which is interesting. But of course, what does it actually say about Avalon in this myth? Well, it's actually a couple things. But the one that's important to the French version is that potentially the Holy Grail was at Avalon. Now, if you guys don't know what the Holy Grail is, it's just supposed to be some super powerful magical thing that granted wish, or whatever version of the myth it was. It just did a bunch of different magical stuff. That's the main thing you have to take from it for now. And I think this is very important because why exactly are we in the zombie storyline going to Avalon? Because we're going there to look for the Sentinel artifact. So what if what Treyarch is doing here is that, hey, in the original myth, it was a Holy Grail, and maybe even the myths of that world, it's still the Holy Grail, but really what it was all along was a Sentinel artifact. And that's why this Sentinel artifact is here, because it's what they think is the Holy Grail. And that alone explains exactly why the Sentinel artifact would be in this map, in Citadelle de Morts, if this is really Avalon, because it's also the Holy Grail. But it doesn't really stop there. Another important thing about Avalon is that it is the same location in all versions of the myth is where Excalibur was crafted and created. The legendary magical sword from all those different myths, it was crafted here. So potentially we can see Excalibur be a wonder weapon on this map. And I mean, it would make sense for two main reasons. First is that we actually have a dedicated melee spot in our loadouts now. You always have a melee weapon on you. You just hold your R3 or whatever it may be for your controller, and you'll always have that on you. And that definitely could be a ton of fun to have a melee wonder weapon again. But another reason I think that this might also be the case is because maybe they'll see it as a melee weapon, a melee wonder weapon even, but it may not be enough for the whole map. And this may be the reason why Treyarch has already told us that this map, Citadelle de Morts, is going to have two wonder weapons. What if one of the wonder weapons is this melee Excalibur, or at least Excalibur inspired wonder weapon, and the other one could be a lot of different things, right? We're not speculating too much on that one. And to me, that potentially could be what they're doing here. And those are the two big things about Avalon and why I think they're actually going to play some sort of role inside of Citadelle de Morts. But it's not the only two things. There's also two other important things about this island, Avalon. And one of those is that this is also the resting place, the supposed resting place of King Arthur himself. After being gravely wounded, he was taken to this island, and based off of whatever version of the myth you looked at, is rather where he ended up dying and where his remains are, or where is he being kept alive by the ruler of this island, a sorcerer or fairy, again based on whichever version of the myth you're looking at, named Morgan. I do think we may see some sort of inspiration, at least from these two things. Now, if we were back in the old Chaos storyline, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a resurrected King Arthur as the boss fight, or even this sorceress Morgan as the boss fight. Now, of course, even though the Chaos story is canon now to this story, I don't think we're going to that level again. But instead, I think we're going to see something similar to what we saw in Terminus, because Terminus itself had some mythical inspirations, and that was through Cthulhu, and that's why the boss fight of that one was some Cthulhu looking, squid octopus looking monster at the end. So potentially with this map, we may see some inspiration like that again. Now, there's probably going to be some weird dark ether explanation instead of some magic explanation, I would assume, even though the Sentinel artifact is there, so potentially it could be, I don't know. Regardless, I wouldn't be surprised that the boss fight of this map has something to do with one of those two characters. And if it is, that would also be absolutely insane. But regardless, that's everything I wanted to share with you in this video. There's a lot of stuff to be excited about going into Citadelle de Morts, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see as it's slowly revealed more and more. But I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions on any of this. Do you guys think I'm reaching here, or is there something I'm also missing that we could add to this to make this even crazier? But regardless, though, that's going to wrap it up for me. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I'm going to go, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.